Let's talk about, that's a hardy perennial, isn't it? HS2. It's an ongoing issue. There have been some high hopes that a new Prime Minister would mean the possibility of really HS2 being kicked into the long grass. Well, a new paper from the free market think tank, the Adam Smith Institute, says today that the UK government should rethink the controversial rail project. Let's talk to Adrian Quine, who's a rail expert and author of the Adam Smith Institute paper. Good morning to you.
Morning.
So let's talk about this then, because there's been so much talk and there's so much controversy over this rail line. It's going to cost huge amounts of money. It's going to take years and years and years. I think we're up to 100 billion on realistic estimates of what it would cost. You're saying, though, that it should be scrapped. Why?
No, I'm not saying entirely it should be scrapped. What I'm saying it is in its current form. It is the wrong model. We do need more capacity on the network, and we do need to be able to upgrade the existing network. But HS2 is way too much of a sort of sledgehammer to crack a nut. We do need more capacity, but the trouble is, what it does is it produces some very, very fast trains between sort of London, Birmingham, London, Manchester, which is fine if you're modelling it on the French system or on the very high-speed system in Beijing to Shanghai, for example, where you need, where you need speed because the distances are so much greater. In Britain, the model is very, very different, and HS2 and very high-speed rail simply doesn't solve the problem.
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? It seems to me to be yet again, despite a rail project going to North and West Midlands and the northern parts of the country, it does actually end up being very London-centric once again, and it's all about trade links and rail links with the capital city, rather than providing those what everybody in Midlands and North is crying out for is those east-west links between all these major cities in the north of the country, which are crying out for those better links and actually have to put up with some really terrible bus services and some really, really low-grade trains, very short, small trains, very unreliable train services. And that's the issue. And we could spend a fraction of what we're spending on HS2 on dealing with that issue.
Absolutely. And the other thing is that actually HS2, is supposed to produce more capacity, and to a certain extent it will, but there's new technology available that would increase capacity on the existing lines. The problem actually is not the West Coast Main Line or the East Coast Main Line. There is capacity available, and even more if you put in digital technology, digital signalling, etc. The problem is the spur lines that come off those main lines that link into the cities. So, for example, the West Coast route from Euston doesn't serve Manchester, it doesn't serve Birmingham, it doesn't serve Liverpool, it goes up the middle. And to get to those three major destinations, you've got to go on to slower spur lines. Now, the average speed is way over 100 miles an hour on the main lines. As soon as you go onto the spur lines, the average speed drops to between 50 and 60, and you go from 4 tracks down to 2. This is where you have the problems. So if you can upgrade the spur lines, or indeed take elements of HS2, for example, the bit between Birmingham and Manchester, I think probably has value, but it doesn't need to be built as a 250 mile an hour super-duper high-speed line to shave a few minutes. What needs to happen is you need to build it as a conventional 125 mile an hour railway and upgrade the existing line so everything is 4 tracks, so you iron out the bottlenecks, you increase the capacity there, and you can do this for a fraction of the cost. And as you said earlier, this will really not just benefit London-centric intercity passengers, it will also benefit locals who are travelling on little, regional.
And we know the original cost-benefit analysis that was done was based on some ridiculous assumptions about likely benefits. And again, we know the cost-benefit analysis even for the Eurotunnel. Again, completely wild, never made a profit, basically all had to be written off. Is it the case that politicians like big projects? They want to have their name associated with something. And we already know that everyone involved in this has already got skin in the game. What was it? We're 4 billion in just on consultants now. Everyone involved in it wants to stay on the gravy train, quite literally. And actually, it's often the biggest improvements to people's lives and businesses often come about from some really quite dull, worthy, very unspectacular projects which do make a real difference.
That's a really important point. You're absolutely right. It's a wild, big, sexy project that people like to sort of put on a pedestal as very visionary and something that we should be doing. Whereas, in fact, you're right. You can deliver a lot more for less with maybe less headline-grabbing schemes. I think the danger is that this has been massively over-engineered by engineers that haven't sort of kept pace with the cost. and are determined almost to outpace other countries with an even faster railway than we have in France or Spain or in China. There is no need for this sort of absurd speed. We are a small country, and the other thing is the model is different. Very, very, very high-speed lines work brilliantly on a point-to-point basis where you have connecting two major cities and you don't stop. That is not the case in Britain. There is no non-stop service at the moment between London and Manchester, London and Birmingham. Everything stops en route. And the reason they do that is we are a much smaller country with lots of important markets along the way. So what we need to come up with is a reliable, fast system where you can stop and start and create the capacity that we needed. I mean, the other point is, Manchester's only 2 hours. We're not talking about travelling across Australia or something, are we? Adrian Quine will have to leave that there, a rail expert, as you can hear, author of that Adam Smith paper on HS2. I have to say, talking a lot of sense, I've always thought HS2 was a white elephant project. It's going to cost, it's going to have to cost 3 times what they said it would cost, and it's probably not going to deliver the benefits people expected.